Discounted, written by Thelonious Howe. Your man looks famished, the second said to the first. The first turned and stared at listless waters from its seated position on a log. Kinda. The first went back to digging in a strange little pouch with its strange little tool momentarily, before turning its attention back to him. You hungry? Of course he was hungry. It had been 3 long moons since these new watchers had dispatched of his old and had taken him as a prize of battle. This was, however, a common trap that new watchers liked to set. Offer a reward for some foodstuffs, or perhaps a small trinket, and see how far they could push one's dignity. Test what sort of indignities they could get away with before there was pushback. Listless had faced this a dozen times before, and would not fall for it again, so he remained still. All right, don't feel like chatting. That's fine. I get it. The first seemed entirely content to carry on the conversation, even if it was only with itself. You should still eat something. Catch, the first said as it threw a strange tan package towards him. Listless Waters examined the satchel, and while he knew how to read, this one was imprinted with a strange alien lexicon that he was unfamiliar with. Fortunately for him, it contained sufficiently detailed pictograms, and he surmised that he could work out how this odd thing was to operate. Open the large packet, take the small packet and flat disc out. Crack the flat disc, place it back in the large packet with the small packet close, and wait. Seemed simple enough. As he was waiting, Listless Waters felt the packet grow warm in his hands. He instinctively dropped the thing and snapped his attention up to his 2 new watchers to see if this was some kind of trick, or a weapon intended to hurt him. Neither of them seemed to be paying him much attention at all. They both were more focused on their meals than anything that he was up to, so any pain he suffered would go unnoticed. Was this part of their play? Show him that they need not revel in his suffering, but they could and would inflict it upon him anyway, just for the fun of it. It'll get it warm, don't worry. Won't burn you or nothing, the first watcher abruptly spoke, seemingly being able to observe him without actually looking at him. That would be something Listless would have to make note of to avoid any future trouble. These new watchers could possibly see without seeing, know that was happening inside his mind as he did. They may actually be more terrifying than the old ones. In their proximity, he would only think of pleasant and submissive thoughts. Listless decided to trust in the watcher's words and hesitantly picked the package back up. The first watcher spoke the truth. It seemed for a while the packet did warm, but never warmed too much. It merely reached an arbitrary determined temperature and remained there. So when Listless felt an appropriate amount of time had passed, he couldn't actually read the instructions after all. He held the meal pouch out to the first watcher. The second watcher said no words. It just furrowed its brow and tossed a finger towards Listless Waters. The first traced the finger back to him. Huh? Your meal is your meal. The first cut him off. This confused Listless. It is part of your meal. You are still eating. The eyes of the first darted back to the second briefly, before returning to him. Yeah, 'cause it's dinner time. But this, he pointed to his own packet, is my meal. This, it said, as it gently pushed the packet he was holding back to his chest, is your meal. More curious behavior from these curious new watchers. I do not have a meal, Listless responded flatly. First narrowed its eyes at him. Yeah, you do. You're holding it. You ate before, right? They didn't just starve you. This was a question Listless could answer. Perhaps these new watchers simply had strange ways. Yes, when the watchers were done, we ate what they had not. Yeah, that's not how we do things, the first said as it stood up. It then gently grabbed Listless under the arms and, for a moment, he thought that he was about to be thrown to the ground, to be battered and beaten, punished for his indiscipline, but none of that came to pass. The first carried him over to another fallen timber and gently placed him upon it. The first then returned to its own seat and to its package. Eat up, it said, while vigorously digging with its long-handled tool. These new watchers had a bizarre way of maintaining their charges, but who was Listless to argue? They were the strong of the universe, and he was the weak. It was his position to only do as the strong told him, so he obliged. And he was very glad that he did. This meal that the new watchers provided was incredible. It put his old diet of left-behinds and scraps to shame. He even dared to venture a guess that it outdid the food even the old watchers were privy to. He couldn't control himself as his claws dug into the delectable brown-yellow paste, stuffing as much into his maw as he could fit. So, hypnotized by the succulent taste, Listless barely wrenched at the second speak again. Jesus Christ, I've never seen anyone so jazzed about rats. It was the first voice that reawakened his faculties. What the fuck? Its voice was barely a whisper, but it still struck Listless to his core. Listless looked down at his claws, which were now covered in the strange packet food, and surmised that his face likely was more of the same, and reality struck him. Oh no, I apologize for my behavior. I'm sorry. He silently prayed that these new watchers would not judge him too harshly for it. The first watcher let out a long breath. Don't be. You eat as much as you want. We got plenty. Listless knew it. The whole thing was a plot. Take him away and fatten him up. Make him gorge himself on their foods to be consumed later. But a strange little voice nagged at the back of his brain. If they were such devious eaters of people, why did they not consume the former watchers? Why were they eating out of the same parcels as he? Why go through all of this trouble and not just cook him over a fire and be done with it? None of what had occurred today had added up in any capacity, and, as an aside, he was still completely lost as to what these new watchers had planned for him, or even how they operated. He knew that he should just leave it be, to not cause any trouble, but Listless had been cursed with boundless curiosity. While speaking out of turn would have, in the past, resulted in a beating or lesser rations, he decided to gamble on the odd nature and strange generosity of these new watchers and simply ask, "What does the future hold?" The first watcher again looked up from his meal. "Well, we're going to get you back to camp, get you seen to, then command will probably put you through processing." "I see," Listless replied. "And after?" "After," the first moved its shoulders up and down briefly, "beats the fuck out of me. I don't know much about relocation and rehoming, sorry, but someone at camp will be able to fill you in better." "And for you? Where will you go after?" Listless pressed. The first just repeated its previous motion. "Royce and I still got a job to do, so they'll just toss our dumb asses back in the field. More of the same." Listless shuddered briefly. He wasn't a field worker. He was made for the indoors, softer tasks, and not optimized for the field. The first watcher stopped eating entirely at the statement. "Okay, I don't think that makes any difference." "If you are to be in the field, that means I will be put in the field. I'm suited for less physical work." "I mean no disrespect. I'm only stating my shortcomings," Listless said. "You, don't have to come back, Archer," the second watcher suddenly spoke. "I'm beholden to my watcher. You have slaughtered my previous, so now I am yours." There was no inflection in his voice. He was just stating a fact, but neither of the new watchers said anything in response. The two new watchers shared a glance with one another before a look of mutual revelation crossed their face. No, nothing like that," the first watcher said softly. "We'll get you back, get you processed, then you'll be free, I promise." This stung at Listless. He knew how to read, he knew how to almost write. He had burned his mind and his eyes deep into the night's darkness, learning things that most would not, simply in hopes of being placed a step up from his fellow wards. So, for the first time in his life, a very smart Listless Waters did something incredibly stupid. "No." The first watcher again turned his attention towards him. "What?" Listless quickly realized his mistake. Both of the new watchers were staring at him intently. It was too late to backtrack now. His punishment that was marked for him was already set. He would see this through. As much as he wanted to throw the remainder of his food to the ground with rage, it was still good rations. So before he did anything rash, Listless folded his packet and placed it gently on the log next to him. "I said no. I know script, I know numbers. I am valuable, and I worked hard for it. I will not be dishonored like this. I will not be given away. I will not be free." The first watcher remained silent for a moment, seemingly processing what Listless had said, before it groaned and drove its eyes into the balls of its hands. "No, not free. Not like that. Free!" Though the word was the same, the inflection of the new watcher put on it for the second time implied something different. "I do not understand. Free means to be given without recompense. I have worth. The last watchers paid for it with coin. You paid for it with blood. Surely you must want your efforts reimbursed. The first drew a deep breath. No, buddy, that's not how this works. We aren't doing this for cash or for credit. We're doing this to free you. Free, as in not beholden to any watchers or masters or dominators or whatever word you have for it. Free to live your own life, do your own thing. Lister stared down at his feet. He didn't know what any of that meant. He had never not been beholden to anyone. Who would feed him? Who would house him? How was he meant to know what he was going to be doing? The first watcher seemed to pick up on his unease. Hey! Its gentle voice broke through his thoughts. Don't worry. We've got a good psych team. They'll help you out. I promise. Yeah, I hope they're as good as they say, the second watcher cut in. They've got some serious unfucking to do. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.